1971 Nissan Skyline, the hakosuka. Just do a walk around on it. So one of the main things is the resto mods. One of the main things we want to do is keep the stance. So no cut front fenders. So we kept the suspension is a 280ZX front strut modified with T3 coilover top hats and Coney yellows. So that lets us set the tire in more and not have to cut the front fenders and still run a modern tire on it. Kind of same thing in the rear. Do a much bigger tire inside the fender with modifications to the aftermarket struts, aftermarket springs, and then some helper springs in the back to kind of set the ride height. Other than that, the car is pretty original to when I got it. All the other JDM goodies, from cut flares in the back from the GTR styling to all the emblems and the grills. So part of the resto mod conversion is an rb25 swap. So this is rb25 DE and modified with GTR R33 ITBs to kind of give it that original GTR feel. So with that, it runs modern fuel injection off a Haltech 2000 with GTR yellow top injectors. So plenty of fuel if someone wanted to convert it to boost, but it's so much fun as a naturally aspirated engine, and the sound it makes is kind of hard to beat. So with that, it was all custom mounts, custom radiator with dual electric fans, and then we run the rb25 DE transmission with a custom drivetrain into an R200 differential with the LSD and CV axles from a 280ZX turbo car. So no more half shafts, none of that good stuff. And then with that, the new engine wanted to upgrade the brakes. So you have a race booster for a 240Z that is modified, so you don't have to pound the fenders with those, but it fits into the hole, and it runs a 280ZX 15/16 master for the rear disc conversion with a Willowwood proportioning valve. It makes adjustable brakes back and forth. So other than that, and then everything else has kind of been relocated. It runs a wiring specialties harness that is kind of tucked into the engine, so you don't have a lot of wires all over the place, and just a relocated VCT solenoid for the R25 to run the ITBs. With this, I run a whole radium fuel system from a surge tank in the back. The radium surge tank runs dual pumps. There's a Bosch circulating pump and then a Walbro in the circulating tank, or in the surge tank. So there's plenty of fuel if someone wanted to convert it, but it runs really nice as is, and you can kind of see, and with this now you can see the T3 top hats with the adjustable Coney yellows in them. So with that conversion, we added a couple of nice trim pieces. So the trunk was empty when I got it, so just added the carbon fiber panels to the bottom, kind of trim it out, make it look a little bit nicer. The battery's been relocated to the trunk for the RB conversion, and then wiring and grounding is back here. And then with that, the radium fuel system is set up back here with the dual pumps and the filter. So we run a radium surge tank with their fuel pressure regulator, and then the stock tank was modified with a fuel pickup, so it runs a 5/8 fuel pickup, so you should have more than enough fuel for anything you wanted to run in the future. And then it returns to the top of the tank now. So this system is returnless, so there's only one line running to the tank, so kind of just keep it clean, less hoses, everything else running around. So for the interior of the car, I kept it pretty much original to when I got it. The only thing that's kind of really changed is that the shifter is a short shifter from the RB. We did keep the original Skyline wooden shifter when I got the car, just kind of I liked it as a nice nostalgia piece. But I did add a radio to the car, so we run the kind of the JDM style front speakers on the deck, and we made a carbon fiber plate to cover the deck plate, and then a Pioneer kind of a low profile deck, so you don't really see it when you drive, to kind of ruin the 70s feel of the car. With the conversion, we did do a lot of the harness got remade for the engine and all the lights and stuff, just because of those old and had some damage to it. So I have a carbon signal gauge pod with carbon signal speed hut gauges. So modern gauges with gauge was converted to miles per hour. So that's the only thing, but it looks, and it still has the original GTR font. Everything else, the wires are kind of tucked and hidden, and then the Haltech is actually behind the gauge cluster. So other than that, the new fuse box is down in the bottom here, but everything else is pretty original to the car as from when I got it. So just kind of keep that 70s look, but just have that modern appeal. Still love the Nardi wheel. Other than that, it's pretty original to when we got it. So we're in the suspension and the brakes of the car. So on the front, I run a 280ZX spindle out of a Turbo 83. With that, it lets you set the front tires in. You don't have to use the big hakosuka front spacer anymore. And then we're able to adapt Willowwood front calipers and slotted rotors to the front. So kind of with that, and then kept the stance, so I didn't want to cut the fenders. That's kind of one of my main things, is that kind of wanted to keep that original GTR look. So that's kind of all what the front suspension was built around. So with that, we run a T3 camber hat on the front, and then Coney yellows that are modified into the 280ZX struts. For tires, we did a kind of a throwback, BF Goodwrench white wall radial TAs. You know, it's kind of a 80s muscle car feel, but kind of liked the look, and they were this nice stance tire, kind of with that bubble wall sidewall. So it's kind of what made that choice on those. For the rear, we have a rear disc conversion. So this was kind of, I built this myself off of the 280ZX calipers. They're modified with a bracket to fit on the hakosuka rear spindles. And then since we run the R200, lets you swap the half shafts into CV axles. So custom shocks, custom springs, do a custom spring rate for the ride height. And then we have special bump stops that we made to kind of help with the ride height and keep the car from bottoming out. So with all the new conversions, we run the bigger master in the front off the 280ZX, and then a proportionally balance the brakes out. Sure. So this is just the cold start of this car. The fuel pump is a little bit loud. We did build a kind of a firewall between the rear seat and the fuel tank to just kind of quiet down the noise. But they are a little bit loud, so that's kind of one of the features of the car, just because the pump sits externally of the tank. With that, idle set, it was dyno tuned, everything was set on there. Idle is really smooth, just around 900 RPMs. Other than that, not much to it on the cold start. It is a little temperamental in the first start, just because of the ITBs, but once it has any kind of temperature into it, there's no issues after that. So. Just the cold start of the engine. Idle's nice, obviously you can hear no ticks, no bangs, no nothing like that. Nice smooth idle, even with the ITBs. We run static fuel pressure, so none of that really changes, nothing that really bounces up and down. So with that, it's pretty smooth. There's not much going on here, and it's kind of one of the ideas of the build is not have the carbs having issues with starting when it's cold or warm or anything like that. Starts, runs every single time. So one of the issues with that was we did keep the TPS and on the original GTR throttle linkage, so it does run that. So it has with that, and then you can run the speed sensor and do a two-step if you wanted. So electronic cooling fans, even when the days it was plus 95 degrees, a car never gets above 190. So no more issues in traffic, none of that stuff that you had with previous setups or anything like carbureted. So that's kind of the idea. This is to take some of the negatives away, but still keep that sound and the feel of what the GTR was meant to be. So